Okay, so welcome back to the channel. Of course, today we have a different setup. I'm in Nigeria for the next 2 weeks, so we are back to the iPhone. It reminds me of the old YouTube days. But of course, as the title suggests, today we'll be talking about Matthieu Blazy being rumored to be the front runner of Chanel. And the first thing I'll say is it's almost getting a bit tiring how everyone under the sun has been linked with Chanel. We've seen names from Simon Paul Jacquemus to Eddie Simon to JW Anderson. I feel like at this point, people are just chucking names and throwing names all over the place and just seeing what sticks. So now, of course, we've seen via Miss Tweed and many other news outlets in fashion that Matthieu Blazy is the front runner for Chanel. And this was very interesting for me because Bottega Veneta is a brand that's doing really, really well. It's actually one of the few brands that's doing well under Kering right now. Kering have had a lot of issues. Check out my live streams and videos on the Kering financial reports if you want to learn more about that. So it would be very shocking if Matthieu Blazy is in a situation that he knows works and he's familiar with. He's been at Bottega for many years. He was there for the latter part of Daniel Lee's tenure as creative director before taking over as creative director himself. So it would be strange to go to a brand where there's too many things that are unknown. And of course, Chanel is a massive brand, it's way bigger than Bottega. Last year, when you look at the financial reports for Chanel, Chanel made close to $20 billion in revenue just last year alone. So, of course, in sheer size, in terms of sheer power, sheer resources, Chanel is obviously bigger. And I'm sure that many designers would dream of going to the biggest house. I mean, we talk about this all the time when we talk about Alexander McQueen and the fact that he went to Kering and Kering eventually invested in his brand because he felt like Bernard Arnault was not taking him seriously when John Galliano was the head of Dior. And he felt that he was relegated to Givenchy, which was kind of a brand that isn't seen in the same ilk as Dior. So this is definitely like a psychological thing that works with designers. He may even be paid more at Chanel because Chanel has more resources. But I can imagine, knowing the position that Kering is in, they would try to match his salary or try to pay him whatever if they can see that there are genuine concerns around him leaving and going to Chanel. So that's a very interesting thing. That was the first point of contention that came to my mind because I was really thinking to myself that what happens if he goes to Chanel and it doesn't work and he's fired in like 2 to 3 years? He should have just stayed at Bottega, where everything works and everything would continue to work long term. I only see Bottega going up from here. And of course, it would take forever for them to get to the revenue figures of Chanel. But sometimes I just feel like, maybe it's good to build on the legacy that you are already creating rather than jumping ship completely and going into the unknown. I do think there are many design cases for why Matthieu Blazy works at Chanel. Matthieu Blazy is someone who has bolstered Bottega in a luxury space to bigger figures. As I've said earlier, he has shown a very adept use of craftsmanship. We've seen all the fabric manipulations that he's been doing at Bottega. I think that would be very interesting to do at Chanel because that is something that Karl Lagerfeld did, making bags with really weird fabrics for Chanel. For example, using like towels to make bags and things like that. So that's something that I can see. I find his luxury very grown up and mature, and I think that is definitely needed at Chanel because most of Chanel's big time customers, like the haute couture customers, the customers that spend loads of money, that I normally see are older women, so they're looking for clothing that is refined in that sense. And I think he can bring a certain seriousness and refinement to Chanel that I think it's been lacking, and it was lacking under Virginie Viard. Of course, there's still a playfulness that needs to be had, and I think that Matthieu Blazy has that also. You see the playfulness in his Bottega collections. You see, him making bean bags with animals, and you can see this sense of humor through his clothes. And you can draw some similarities between Matthieu Blazy and Karl Lagerfeld in this sense because Karl Lagerfeld is someone that we can say he revitalized Chanel in a sense. He kind of reinvented the codes of Chanel, but in a way that is very true to him. And he wasn't copying Chanel. If anything, he actually flipped Chanel on its head. And I've talked about this in a past video, so I won't get into it. But you guys can check out that video if you want on Karl Lagerfeld. But that's what Matthieu Blazy does, because he has the essence of Bottega Veneta down, but at the same time, he doesn't copy what Thomas Meyer did, and he's kind of finding ways to make Bottega interesting, but not remove it from the essence of it being, this very serious luxury brand. Of course, quite luxury is a term we use now. I don't really like that term because it's overplayed, it's overused, and it's kind of cringy, for lack of a better term. I also think that Matthieu Blazy is very good at working at different houses. If you think of the fact that he was working with Raf Simons for many years, with the Raf Simons eponymous label, also at Calvin Klein for his brief stint there. He's also worked at brands like Celine. So he knows how to go to different brands and kind of cater to the essence and the codes of that brand, but still make it interesting and be a big part as to why it's more fun and it's not completely the same as the old stuff. Sometimes I think, yes, I can see where it could work in the terms of fabric manipulation, and he could do really interesting things with tweed and things like that. However, part of me is feeling like the aesthetic that Matthieu Blazy is used to, whether we're thinking of Celine or Margiela or Raf Simons or Calvin Klein, all of those brands that he's designed a very clean-cut look, whereas a lot of Chanel isn't as clean as Bottega. It's not Bottega clean. It's not Raf Simons clean, where Raf Simons has these really lovely, well-designed, oversized coats and stuff. Chanel can be a bit tacky and wacky and girly. Not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. It's just very different to what Matthieu Blazy is used to. And I do think that it leaves a lot to be seen whether he can actually really do that effectively. You also have to think the expectations at a brand like Chanel are not the same at Bottega, because Bottega doesn't make close to as much money. So the scrutiny, how will he handle it? I think now we're so used to Matthieu Blazy getting positive reviews, which I think he deserves, because I think he's an amazing designer. I definitely love his designs, personally. However, how will he handle if he does an haute couture collection, for example, and there's loads of hate? I don't think he's ever experienced that before, and I don't know how he could handle that. So I think there are many positives and many negatives when you think of Matthieu Blazy at Chanel, but I'm very curious to know what you guys think. Do you guys think he would be a good fit? Do you think he won't? And if he's not a good fit, who exactly do you have going to Chanel that would be the best bet? But on that note, thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.